John Miller knelt in the soft dirt of the Nebraska forest, carefully placing a plant sample into his collection bag. The evening air was cool against his skin as the sun began to set. As a botanist, these solitary research trips were his favorite. Part of the job? At 32 years old, John had spent the last decade studying rare plant species that might have medical benefits. He brushed his brown hair from his eyes and made a note in his small field journal, a strange humming sound. Made John look up from his work? The sound grew louder, and suddenly the entire forest was bathed in bright blue light. The trees cast long, strange shadows as the light source moved directly overhead. John stood quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. The light was so intense. He had to shield his eyes. "Hello?" John called out, his voice sounding small in the vast forest. "Is anyone there?" The humming changed pitch, becoming higher and more urgent. John felt a strange, tingling sensation spread across his body. He tried to move, but found himself frozen in place. Panic flooded through him as his feet left the ground. The last thing he saw was his sample bag falling to the forest floor as he was pulled upward into the blinding light. At the same moment, over 1,000 miles away, Olivia Bennett stood on a rocky beach in Maine, the 28-year-old Marine. Biologist was taking water samples near a tide pool. Her blonde hair was tied back in a practical ponytail as she carefully measured the water temperature. The research center where she worked was studying how warming oceans affected local marine life. Olivia looked up. When she noticed the water in the tide pool beginning to vibrate, small ripples formed on the surface, though there was no wind. Then she saw a bright blue light reflecting off the water. She turned around and gasped as she saw a massive shape hovering above the beach. Blocking out the stars before she could even think to run, a beam of light shot down from the object. Olivia felt her muscles lock in place. The sample bottles slipped from her hands and shattered on the rocks. She wanted to scream, but couldn't make a sound as she was lifted off the ground. John woke up with a pounding headache. He was lying on something firm but not uncomfortable. Slowly opening his eyes, he found himself in a room unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls appeared to be made of some kind of clear material, but they gave off a faint glow. The air felt different, heavier somehow. With a strange metallic taste, he sat up carefully and realized he was wearing different clothes. A simple gray outfit made of a fabric he didn't recognize. John walked to the nearest wall and placed his hand against it. It felt warm and seemed to pulse slightly under his touch. Beyond the wall, John could see movement. His eyes widened as a figure came into view. It was tall, at least 7 feet with a slender body and long limbs. Its skin had a bluish tint that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The head was larger than a human's, with no hair and enormous almond-shaped eyes that were completely black. It moved with strange grace, almost gliding rather than walking. John stumbled backward, his back hitting the opposite wall. This couldn't be real. He must be dreaming or hallucinating. The creature outside tilted its head as if studying him, then moved away. In another chamber nearby, Olivia was also waking up. Her reaction was more immediate. She jumped to her feet and began pounding on the transparent wall. "Let me out!" She shouted. "Where am I? Who are you people?" 3 of the tall beings gathered outside her enclosure, observing her with what seemed like curiosity. One of them made a series of clicking sounds to the others. They appeared to be communicating, though Olivia couldn't understand anything they said. One of the beings touched something on the wall, and a small section slid open. It placed what looked like a bowl of colorful cubes inside, then closed the opening. Olivia approached cautiously and examined the objects. They looked like food of some kind, but she was too afraid to try them. Days passed, though it was hard to keep track of time. John tried to establish a routine to stay sane. He exercised in his small space, practiced meditation, and attempted to communicate with the beings whenever they appeared. They seemed most interested when he spoke, often tilting their heads and making notes on devices they carried. The beings, John had begun calling them the visitors, in his mind started showing him images projected onto one of the walls. Pictures of stars, planets, and what appeared to be their own species. John realized they were trying to teach him something. Perhaps their language or history. In her chamber, Olivia had taken a more scientific approach. She had started drawing diagrams on the floor using a substance from the food they provided that left temporary marks. She created simple mathematical equations, hoping the universal language of math might help establish communication. One day, the wall of John's chamber suddenly became transparent in a new section, revealing another room. Inside was Olivia, who was in the middle of creating a diagram. Their eyes met, and both froze in shock at seeing another human. "Hello?" John called out, placing his hand on the wall. "Can you hear me?" Olivia rushed to the wall separating them, placing her hand against his. "Yes, I can hear you. Who are you? How did you get here?" "I'm John Miller, a botanist from Nebraska. I was collecting samples when they took me. What about you?" "Olivia Bennett, marine biologist from Maine. The same thing happened to me on a beach." Tears filled her eyes. "I thought I was the only one." Their conversation was interrupted when a new being entered the area between their chambers. It was different from the others, taller, with more elaborate markings on its skin. It carried a device that it placed between their rooms. The device projected an image of Earth, then showed the two humans, and finally displayed what appeared to be a DNA strand. "I think they're studying us," John said quietly. "But why us? Why humans?" The lead being, who John would later learn was called Kalmar, made a series of gestures while images flashed on the screen. Images of their species looking sick, then dying, then a combined human and alien DNA strand forming something new. "I think," Olivia said slowly, "they need something from us. Something in our DNA." John nodded, a chill running down his spine. "And I don't think they plan on sending us home until they get it." The alien scientist Kalmar watched the humans, communicating with growing hope. The specimens were intelligent and adaptable, good signs for the compatibility their species so desperately needed. As Kalmar observed them forming a bond through the barrier, it signaled to the others. The first phase was complete. Now the real work could begin. 7 days passed since John and Olivia discovered each other. The aliens had begun allowing them to meet in a shared space for a few hours each day. This room was larger than their individual chambers, with soft, curved furniture that adjusted to their bodies when they sat down. Strange plants with glowing leaves grew from built-in containers along the walls. "I think they realized we need social interaction," Olivia said as she sat across from John. "They're studying everything about us." John nodded. "I've been keeping track of their routines. 3 different groups visit my chamber each day. The first group just observes. The second performs scans with their devices. The third brings food and seems more interested in communication." Olivia leaned forward. "Have you noticed the tall one with the silver markings on its neck? I think it's their leader or maybe a scientist. It watches me more carefully than the others." "That's Kalmar," John said. "At least that's what I think its name is. The others make a specific sound when addressing it." "You're trying to learn their language?" Olivia asked, impressed. John shrugged. "I'm trying. It's mostly clicks and humming sounds, but there are patterns. I've started making similar sounds back to them. Yesterday, one of them seemed excited when I did it. Their conversation was interrupted when the door slid open. 3 aliens entered, including Kalmar and a smaller one that moved with quick, nervous gestures. The third alien was new to them. Its skin had a deeper blue color with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change. Kalmar approached with a device similar to a tablet. It made a series of sounds, then pointed to the screen. An image appeared, showing Earth, then zoomed in to show humans interacting, communicating, and working together. John glanced at Olivia, then back at the screen. "I think they want to understand how we communicate." The new alien stepped forward. Unlike the others, who maintained a distance, this one came close to the humans. It placed a hand on its chest and made a musical sound. "Ilefi," it repeated, tapping its chest. John smiled and mirrored the gesture. "John," he said clearly. Olivia did the same. "Olivia." Ilefi made a sound that vaguely resembled their names, then pointed to the tablet. A series of simple images appeared, basic shapes, colors, and objects. Beside each image was a written symbol, and when Alethi touched each one, the corresponding sound played. "They're teaching us their language," Olivia whispered, "and trying to learn ours." Over the next several days, Alethi worked with them for hours. The alien was clearly a specialist in communication. Progress was slow but steady. They learned that the aliens called themselves the Voxari, and their ship, which John and Olivia now realized they were on, was called something that translated roughly to Last Hope. During one session, John decided to be more direct. He drew a simple picture of two humans in a spaceship returning to Earth. He pointed to the image then, too. Himself and Olivia. Alethi's large eyes blinked rapidly. It made a sound that they had come to recognize as signaling hesitation or uncertainty. Then it showed them an image of the Voxari ship approaching a small moon orbiting a gas giant. Many Voxari were shown living in dome structures on the moon's surface. "I think that's their home now," Olivia said. "Not where they came from, but where they live." Alethi nodded vigorously, seeming pleased they understood. Then it showed an animation of Voxari becoming fewer in number with each passing cycle of the moon. The final image showed only a handful remaining. "They're dying out," John said quietly. "Their species is going extinct." The next day, Kelmer joined their session with Alethi. The lead scientist brought a new device that projected a three-dimensional model in the center of the room. It showed the double helix structure of DNA. Kelmer manipulated the projection, zooming in on specific sections of the DNA strand. Then it showed a Voxari DNA structure beside it. The alien DNA looked similar, but had noticeable differences. Parts were faded or seemed to be breaking down, using their growing shared vocabulary. Alethi explained that the Voxari were suffering from genetic degradation. Their reproductive capabilities had been declining for generations. Now, most Voxari were completely infertile. "How many Voxari are left?" John asked. Using a combination of their words and hand gestures, Alethi made a series of sounds which their translation device interpreted as approximately 2,000 individuals. 3 generations ago, there had been over 10,000. "And they think we can help them somehow," Olivia said. She pointed to the human DNA, then to the Voxari DNA, and made a questioning gesture. Kelmer stepped forward and adjusted the projection. Now it showed human DNA sequences being integrated into Voxari genetic material. The resulting hybrid DNA appeared stable and complete. "They don't want to breed with us directly," John realized. "They need our genetic material for some kind of engineering process." That evening, after being returned to their separate chambers, John and Olivia each received new accommodations. Their rooms were larger, with actual beds instead of the simple platforms they had been sleeping on. There were areas with drawing materials, books filled with Voxari language symbols, and even simple musical instruments. "I think we've been upgraded from specimens to guests," John said the next day when they met. Olivia wasn't as optimistic. "Or they're just making us more comfortable because they plan to keep us longer than we thought." A new Voxari joined them. That day, this one moved more slowly than the others and had skin that had faded to a pale blue. Alethi introduced it as Vexenor. An elder and leader, Vexenor studied them silently for a long moment before speaking through the translation device. The words were stilted and simple, but clear enough. "We watch humans many cycles. Choose you two for special traits in blood. Need your help save Voxari. All die soon without help." John and Olivia exchanged looks. Finally, John asked, "If we help you, will you take us home?" Vexenor's large eyes blinked slowly. "Cannot promise. Process complex." "Dangerous, maybe? Dangerous?" Olivia repeated. "Dangerous how?" But Vexenor had already turned to leave, moving with apparent effort. At the doorway, the elder paused and looked back at them. "Rest, learn more tomorrow, important choice coming." After the aliens left, Olivia turned to John, her face pale. "I don't think they're telling us everything." "What did Vexenor mean by dangerous?" John took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I don't know. But we need to learn more about what they're planning. If we understand their language better, maybe we can find out what they're hiding." Olivia nodded, her expression determined. and maybe find a way home. Outside their chamber, Kalmar and Alethi watched the humans through the one-way transparent wall. Alethi made a series of concerned sounds. Kalmar responded with a firm gesture. Their time was running out. The genetic extraction process needed to begin soon, whether the humans fully understood what it meant for them or not. The survival of the Voxari depended on it. 2 weeks had passed since their first meeting with Elder Vexener. John and Olivia were now allowed to move freely through several sections of the ship, though certain areas remained off-limits. They wore small devices on their wrists that both tracked their location and helped translate the Voxari language. John stood at a large viewing window, staring out at the stars. The sight still took his breath away. Back on Earth, he had never imagined he would see space like this. The vast emptiness dotted with countless points of light stretched endlessly before him. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Olivia said, joining him at the window. "Even in this situation, I can't help being amazed." John nodded. "I've been trying to recognize constellations, but nothing looks familiar. We must be very far from Earth." Their conversation was interrupted by Alethi, who approached with a tray of food. The alien linguist had become something like a friend to them, spending hours each day helping them learn about Voxari culture and history. "Eat," Alethi said in English. The alien's pronunciation was still strange, but its vocabulary grew daily. "Then Kelmar won't see you in science chamber." They had discovered that the food provided by the Voxari was specially created to match human nutritional needs. It looked nothing like Earth food, mostly colorful cubes and spheres with different textures, but tasted better than they had initially feared after eating. They followed Alethi through the curved corridors of the ship. Other Voxari they passed watched them with open curiosity. Some made greeting gestures they had learned were signs of respect. The science chamber was a large room filled with equipment John and Olivia couldn't begin to understand. Screens displayed data in the flowing script of the Voxari language. In the center of the room stood a three-dimensional projection of what appeared to be a DNA strand slowly rotating. Kelmer was working at one of the stations but looked up when they entered. The head scientist made a gesture of welcome. "Thank you for coming," Kelmer said through a more advanced translation device. "Today I will show you more about our problem and why we need your help." The projection changed to show a timeline. Alethi explained that the Voxari had once lived on a planet circling a star in a distant system. Their civilization had been advanced and peaceful, spanning thousands of years. But about 300 years ago, their star had become unstable. "Our ancestors built great ships to escape," Alethi said. "Many thousands of Voxari left on these ships to find new homes among the stars." The projection showed a fleet of massive vessels leaving a dying world. Then it zoomed in on one ship, the very one they were now on. "This ship, Last Hope. For many years," Kelmer continued. "But in deep space, something happened. A type of cosmic radiation our shields could not block." The projection showed the ship passing through a colorful cloud in space. Then it showed Voxari becoming sick. "The radiation damaged our genetic code," Kelmer explained. "At first, we did not know. But with each new generation, more Voxari were born, weak or not born at all. Now, almost no Voxari can have children." John stepped closer to the projection. "And you think human DNA can help fix this damage?" "Yes," Kelmer said. "Your species has special genetic traits: strong resistance to radiation, ability to adapt quickly. These traits could save Voxari from extinction." "But why us specifically?" Olivia asked. "Out of all humans?" Kelmer manipulated the controls, and the projection changed to show human DNA strands. 2 were highlighted, John's and Olivia's. "You both carry rare genetic markers," Kelmer explained. "Your DNA has unusual strength in areas where ours is weakest. You were chosen after long study of many humans," John frowned. "How long have you been studying humans?" Alethi and Kelmer exchanged looks before Alethi answered. "We have observed Earth for over 50 years. We watched your species grow and develop. We collected samples when possible." "Samples?" Olivia repeated. "You've been taking people before us?" "No," Kelmer said quickly. Only small things, hair, blood from medical facilities. Things humans would not miss. Before they could ask more questions, the door to the science chamber opened. Elder Vexener entered, accompanied by another Voxari they hadn't met before. This new alien wore a kind of uniform with markings that suggested authority. "This is Zarvek," Alethi whispered to them. "Head of ship security." Vexener approached them slowly. The elder seemed to have aged even in the short time since they last saw him. His skin was paler, and he moved with obvious effort. "John Miller." "Olivia Bennett," Vexener said, using their full names with careful pronunciation. "Time grows short. For my people, have Kelmer and Alethi explained what we need." John glanced at Olivia before answering. "They've told us about your genetic problems, but they haven't explained exactly what you need from us or how you plan to use our DNA?" Vexener nodded slowly. "It is complicated, but you must understand full truth before decision." The elder turned to Kelmer and made a sharp gesture. The scientist seemed hesitant but adjusted the projection again. Now it showed a complex medical procedure. John and Olivia watched as animated figures representing them were shown in medical pods with machines, extracting something from their bodies. "The genetic material we need exists throughout your bodies," Vexener explained, "but is concentrated in bone marrow and reproductive cells. The extraction process is difficult." Zarvek stepped forward, speaking for the first time. His voice was deeper than the other Voxari they had met. "Tell them all, Elder. Tell them the process will kill them." The room fell silent. John felt as if the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Beside him, Olivia gasped. "Kill us?" She whispered, "The procedure is fatal." Kelmer made an angry sound at Zarvek before turning to the humans. "As currently designed, yes. The extraction would take too much from your systems. We are trying to find another way, but we are running out of time," Zarvek interrupted. "The last Voxari child was born 5 years ago. Since then, nothing. We will be extinct within 1 generation without your sacrifice." John took Olivia's hand, squeezing it tightly. "You kidnapped us to kill us?" Vexener raised a hand. "Not all agree with this plan. I believe there must be another way. Kelmar's team is working to develop a process that would not harm you." "And if they can't find one?" Olivia asked, her voice shaking. Zarvek stepped closer, towering over them. "Then we must make a choice. 2 human lives against the entire Voxari species. Which is more important?" Alethi moved between them and Zarvek. "Enough! You frighten them needlessly. We still have time." "How much time?" John asked. Vexener's large eyes blinked slowly. "Perhaps 1 month in your Earth time? That is how long." "Kelmer has to find another solution after that ... The elder didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Zarvek made a sharp gesture of frustration and left the chamber. Vexener watched him go, then turned back to the humans. "Rest. Think. We will speak again tomorrow." After the Voxari left, John and Olivia stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Olivia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're going to kill us, aren't they?" John pulled her into a hug, his mind racing. "Not if we can find another way. Or find a way off this ship first." John couldn't sleep. He paced the floor of his quarters, thinking about what they had learned. The Voxari needed their genetic material to save their species, but the process would kill them. They had 1 month before a decision would be made. His door slid open and Olivia entered. They had discovered that their wrist devices could be used to access each other's rooms. "I couldn't sleep either," she said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I keep thinking about what Zarvek said." John sat beside her. "We need to find a way out of this. Either convince them there's another way to get what they need or ... or escape," Olivia finished. "But how? We're on a spaceship somewhere far from Earth. Even if we could take a smaller ship, we wouldn't know how to fly it or where to go." Before John could answer, a loud alarm began to sound throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridor. Outside, they felt the floor vibrate beneath them. "What's happening?" Olivia asked, standing up. The door opened again, and Alethi rushed in. The alien's skin was pulsing with bright patterns, a sign of distress they had learned to recognize. "Come quickly," Alethi said. "Emergency, ship entering radiation storm." They followed Alethi through corridors filled with hurrying Vossari. The ship shuddered several times, and they had to brace themselves against the walls. "What's a radiation storm?" John asked as they ran. "Dangerous space phenomenon," Alethi explained. "Like the one that damaged our ancestors. But this one much stronger." They arrived at a large chamber they hadn't seen before. It appeared to be a control room. Vexener, Kelmer, and Zarvek were already there, along with many other Voxari working at control stations. Through a large viewing window, they could see a swirling mass of colorful energy ahead of the ship. It looked beautiful but terrifying, like a cosmic hurricane made of light. "Can't we go around it?" Olivia asked. Zarvek turned to them. "Too late. Storm appeared suddenly on our path. Shields at maximum, but will not hold against full force." Kelmer was working frantically at a control panel. "All non-essential personnel to shielded inner chambers. Radiation will penetrate outer hull sections." "What about us?" John asked. "Should we go to these inner chambers too?" Vexener approached them. "No need. Humans have natural resistance to this type of radiation. You will be safer than Voxari." A violent shudder ran through the ship as they entered the edge of the storm. Equipment sparked and several control panels went dark. 3 Voxari fell to the floor, their skin turning a sickly gray color. "They're being affected already," Olivia said, rushing to help one of the fallen aliens. "Their genetic damage makes them vulnerable," Kelmer explained, also showing signs of distress. "Radiation accelerates the deterioration?" John looked around at the failing systems. "How can we help?" Zarvek seemed surprised by the offer but quickly pointed to an unmanned station. "This controls internal shields. Can you monitor power levels?" John nodded and moved to the station. The controls were labeled in Voxari script, but he had learned enough to understand the basics. Olivia joined Helmor, helping stabilize the affected crew members for the next several hours. The ship battled through the storm. More Voxari fell ill as radiation leaked through the shields. John worked continuously at the shield controls, rerouting power from non-essential systems to strengthen protection around the most vulnerable areas. Olivia helped move injured Voxari to a medical chamber, where she assisted the medical team as best she could. Her background in biology gave her some understanding of what they were doing, even if the technology was far beyond anything on Earth. When the ship finally emerged from the storm, nearly a third of the crew was incapacitated. 5 had died. The ship itself had suffered significant damage to its engines and life support systems. In the aftermath, John and Olivia worked alongside the Voxari to make repairs. Their smaller size allowed them to access tight spaces that the taller aliens couldn't reach. Their resistance to the lingering radiation meant they could work in areas that were still dangerous for the Voxari. 3 days after the storm, they were called to meet with Vexenor in his private chamber. The elder looked worse than ever, his skin now almost white and hanging loosely on his frame. "You helped save many lives," Vexenor said, his voice weak. "Without your assistance, more would have died." "We did what anyone would do," John said. Vexenor's large eyes studied them. "Not anyone. After learning we might take your lives, you still help save ours. This is unexpected." Olivia stepped forward. "Just because we don't want to die doesn't mean we want to see your people suffer." The elder nodded slowly. "The storm has changed things. Many key scientists are ill or dead. The genetic work has been delayed." "What does that mean for us?" John asked. "It means you have more time," Vexenor said. "But it also means our situation is more desperate. The radiation damaged many Voxari further. Our extinction now approaches even faster." Olivia looked at John, then back to Vexenor. "During the crisis, I worked with your medical team. I saw some of your genetic data. I'm not an expert, but I noticed something." Vexenor tilted his head. "What did you see?" "There were patterns in your DNA that reminded me of something I studied on Earth. Certain sea creatures can repair radiation damage to their cells. If your scientists would let me work with them, maybe I could help. John nodded. And I've been thinking too? The problem isn't just getting our genetic material, it's getting enough of it without killing us. What if there was a way to use smaller samples and replicate them? For the first time, they saw something like hope in Vexenor's eyes. You would help us, even after what we did to you? We don't want to die, John said firmly. But we also don't want to see your entire species vanish if we can prevent it. Later, as they walked back to their quarters, Olivia whispered to John, "Did you mean what you said? About helping them?" John nodded. "Yes, but I also meant what I said about not dying. If we make ourselves valuable, if we prove we can help them without sacrificing our lives, they'll have reason to keep us alive and eventually return us to Earth. And if they don't agree?" Olivia asked. John's expression hardened. "Then we still need to find a way off this ship. I've been studying their systems while making repairs. I think I might know how to access one of their smaller vessels." They stopped talking as Zarvek passed them in the corridor. The security chief watched them with suspicious eyes but said nothing. When they reached Olivia's quarters, John said quietly, "Be careful what you say." "I think Zarvek is watching us more closely now." Olivia nodded. "The storm changed things. Some of the Voxari look at us differently now with respect. Others, like Zarvek, seem more desperate than ever. We helped them during the crisis." John said, "But that won't matter to Zarvek if he decides our lives are worth sacrificing to save his people." As they parted, neither noticed the small listening device Zarvek had placed near Olivia's door. The security chief had heard every word of their conversation, including their plans for escape. For 2 weeks, John and Olivia worked alongside the Voxari scientists. Olivia spent hours in the lab with Kelmer, studying the genetic damage and testing theories based on Earth creatures that could repair radiation damage. John focused on the extraction process, trying to find a way to use smaller samples that wouldn't harm them. "I think we're making progress," Olivia told John one evening in her quarters. "The sea cucumber cells I described to them have amazing regenerative properties. Kelmer believes we can use that as a model," John nodded excitedly. "And I've been working on a method using stem cells. If we can take just a small sample and then grow more in the lab, they wouldn't need to take so much from us." They were interrupted by an urgent message on their wrist devices. Alethi was calling them to the medical chamber immediately. When they arrived, they found Vexenor on a medical bed surrounded by concerned Voxari. The elder's skin was now almost transparent, his breathing shallow. "The radiation accelerated his condition," Kelmer explained quietly. "He does not have much time left." Vexenor's eyes opened when he sensed their presence. He gestured weakly for them to come closer. "John Miller." "Olivia Bennett," he said, his voice barely audible. "I must tell you something about Earth." They moved closer to hear his words. "Your planet was not chosen by accident," Vexenor whispered. "Long ago, when our ancestors first left our dying world, they visited many planets. On Earth, they found primitive life with potential. They made adjustments." John and Olivia exchanged shocked looks. "Are you saying the Voxari influenced human evolution?" Olivia asked. Vexenor made a small gesture of confirmation. "Not only humans, many Earth species left genetic markers. Plan was to return one day. Create alliance between our kinds." The elder's breathing became more labored. "That is why you're DNA compatible, why you can help us. We are connected." With great effort, Vexenor took something from beside his bed and pressed it into John's hand. It was a small data device. "All truth here, about your world, about ours. Use it wisely." Those were his last words. The elder's eyes closed and his breathing stopped. The Voxari in the room made a haunting musical sound that John and Olivia realized was a morning ritual. They were still processing Vexenor's revelation when alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Zarvek's voice came over the communication system, ordering all crew to the main gathering chamber. "What's happening?" John asked Ella. Single quotes the linguist's skin patterns showed extreme distress. Zarvik is taking control of the ship. With Vexener gone, he is next in line of authority. In the gathering chamber, Zarvik stood on a raised platform. His uniform now bore additional markings of leadership. The security chief's voice boomed through the large space. "Our beloved Elder Vexener has joined our ancestors," he announced. "In this time of crisis, I take command. My first order is to proceed with the full genetic extraction procedure from the humans. Our survival cannot wait any longer." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Kelmer stepped forward. "We are close to a solution that would not harm them," the scientist protested. "Just a few more days, no more delays," Zarvik interrupted. "Every day more Vasari die. The procedure will begin tomorrow." John felt Olivia grip his hand tightly. They began to back slowly toward the exit, but two of Zarvik's security team moved to block their path. "Take them to separate holding chambers," Zarvik ordered. "Prepare them for the procedure." As the guards approached, Alethi suddenly stepped. "Between them and the humans, this is wrong. Vexener would not approve. We must honor his wishes." More Voxari moved to stand with Alethi, including Kelmer and several other scientists. The chamber was dividing into two groups, those supporting Zarvik and those opposing him. In the confusion, John whispered to Olivia, "This is our chance. We need to get to Docking Bay 3. I've prepared one of the small ships." They slipped away as the Voxari argued among themselves. Using the knowledge of the ship they had gained during repairs, they navigated through maintenance passages to avoid security. When they reached the docking bay, John rushed to a small vessel he had secretly been studying. He had spent hours learning its basic controls during repair work. "Can you really fly this thing?" Olivia asked as they climbed inside. "I think so," John said, not sounding entirely confident. "The navigation system is largely automated. If I can get it started, it should be able to follow coordinates." Before he could activate the launch sequence, the docking bay doors opened. Zarvik entered with 4 guards, weapons drawn. "Stop," the security chief ordered. "You cannot escape your duty to our people." John stepped protectively in front of Olivia. "We want to help you, but not by dying. There's another way." "It is too late for other ways," Zarvik said, advancing toward them. Suddenly, Kelmer and Alethi rushed into the bay with a larger group of Voxari behind them. Some were scientists, others regular crew members who had worked with John and Olivia during the crisis. "Enough, Zarvik," Kelmer said firmly. "The humans have proven themselves allies. They stayed to help when they could have tried to escape during the storm. We will not repay that by taking their lives." Zarvik looked around at the growing number of Voxari opposing him. His security team seemed uncertain. "What do you propose?" "Instead?" he demanded. John stepped forward, still holding the data device Vexener had given him. "We found a solution. A process using stem cells and regenerative techniques from Earth species. It will take more time, but it won't require our deaths." "And why should I believe this will work?" Zarvik asked skeptically. Olivia joined John. "Because Vexener believed it. And because your ancestors engineered our species to be compatible with yours. We're meant to help each other, not sacrifice each other." The standoff lasted several tense moments. Finally, Zarvik lowered his weapon. 3 days, he said. "You have 3 days to prove your method works. If it fails, we return to the original plan." 3 days later, in the main science chamber, John and Olivia watched as Kelmer injected a young Voxari female with the treatment they had developed together. The treatment contained engineered cells derived from small samples of the humans' bone marrow, combined with regenerative properties inspired by Earth sea creatures. Hours passed as they monitored the patient's condition. Finally, Kelmer performed a genetic scan and turned to the waiting crowd with patterns of joy pulsing across his skin. "The damaged sections are repairing," he announced. "The treatment is working." In the days that followed, more Voxari received the treatment. Their genetic structure began to stabilize, with the first signs that reproductive capabilities might be restored. A month later, John and Olivia stood at the viewing window as the Voxari ship approached Earth. Do you think they'll keep their promise to share their technology with us? Olivia asked. John nodded, looking at the data device from Vexenor that contained information about the ancient connection between their species. I think this is just the beginning of a much longer story between humans and Vuxari. As Earth grew larger in the window, John took Olivia's hand. They were not the same people who had been abducted months ago. They had faced death, helped save an alien species, and discovered an ancient link between their worlds. Ready to go home? He asked. Olivia smiled. Yes, but I have a feeling our adventure is just beginning. Behind them, Olithi watched with mixed emotions. The linguist knew that the connection formed between their species would change both worlds forever. As the Vuxari prepared to reveal themselves to Earth, a new chapter in cosmic history was about to be written.